In this installment of Cape Lomond, we're going to focus on getting some education started in the city. We spent a bit of time in the last episode getting some infrastructure in its place. We've got the highway running down the coast with a modest interchange ready to go, so it's just a case of choosing an appropriate spot to develop. I'm going to build within this corner. It seems a natural place to build around. We've got the road network in place and there's going to be a bit of decent expansion as we build towards the coast here. How that density is going to look, I've not entirely made my mind up yet, but I know there will be a lot of residential here, so it makes sense to get it in nice and central between the areas that have a lot of that residential activity. Now pretty quickly in this build we're going to have to take some decisive action on the budget, as the investment in the education is going to have a big impact on the city finances. So there are going to be some tough choices to make to ensure the long-term success of the city, and we'll get to see that a little bit later on. Alright, let's get into it. With the first area cleared and flattened, I want to give our school district a prominent position at the crossroads. The demand for elementary schools in this game is quite frankly a bit absurd, so I'm going to preempt that demand by using 3 of these buildings, which should hopefully satisfy a bit of the future demand. Ideally the Sims are looking for elementary schools within walking distance, but quite frankly I don't want this asset popping up absolutely everywhere in the map. So I'm going to stick a few together, we'll see how it pans out. To help out with the budget, and more on that later, I'll just turn 2 of them off until we need them. I'll get all the upgrades in now, and I'm going to overlap the add-on upgrade buildings with Anarchy. We'll give that impression that we've got multiple large buildings on each of the schools. I don't believe the benefit stacks, but if I'm wrong on that, just let me know in the comments. With the placement of the individual buildings in place, I want to give the illusion that this is one big school complex. So we'll get all the surfaces dragged over, we'll get them all joined up. We can fix some obvious gaps with a couple of plazas, and again it's just a case of playing about with those surfaces until we're happy with the overall look. So let's box off the elementary school. That'll give us a nice area for a community space later. Got a few ideas for this one. And now let's pick up a spot for the high school. That is tight, but it does fit beautifully up against the elevated road, doesn't it? So Anarchy to the rescue again, pretty happy with that, it looks decent. Now with the biggest assets in place, let's extend out and get the rest of the bigger stuff in. I'll need to expand the paths out, I want to get some more parking and sports assets in here as well, and I'll find a few appropriate spots to connect our arterials here as well. If you like the look of things so far, please do hit that like button folks, drop a comment, it really does help, and if you're not subscribed yet, why not? We do have a bit of an elevation change here which can be a bit awkward to build on, so I'm going to add an obvious height change with a snaking elevated path through here, and from there I'm going to flatten the land a bit at the higher elevation, and it'll give us a bit of space to add a small residential street or two. Any of the remaining slopes I think we can get a bit of tree action later on there and can round the area off. Right, so I think I'm happy with the overall layout. The corner position of the main build looks decent I think, the joined up surfaces really do help give that impression of that big asset. I mean, it is massive, but what can you do? You may as well lean into it. We got lots of interesting space to work with in the big community area here in the middle, and I'm going to use that to build some play areas. I had a crack at making a softball playing field, so stick around for that, looks okay. As I was building along, I became acutely aware that the funds are running low. There will need to be a shift in plan, or the city might end up going bankrupt. Given how easy it is to make money in this game, I think I can safely say I would have been the first Cities Skylines 2 series where the city actually went bankrupt. So now, I need to get zoning, I need to start collecting more tax revenues. Imagine the shame of going bankrupt in this game. I'd delete the channel, delete Twitter, delete Discord, uninstall the game, throw the PC out the window, I'd be done, spent. So yeah, I'm going to have to address the financials here. As a temporary measure, I've jumped over to the port area and spammed a bit of generic industry to get a bit of money in. And although the funds are low, I unlocked and invested in a gas power plant. There's good money to be had exporting electricity in this game, so I thought it should be money well spent. I've slashed all non-essential budgets, so that will impact on our growth. To be honest, the services won't be running at full efficiency, and just to piss off our Sims even more, I'll need to bump up the tax rates. I'm going to go for 18% in an attempt to balance this budget. So I'm sure I'm not going to be a popular mayor, but it's all going to be necessary as the city funds are now sitting at paltry 25k. Now we have that financial fire extinguished for now, let's get back to our school district. Although it wasn't in my initial plan to start on higher density residential here, I reckon I need to satisfy some of that demand and help get some more cash in the bank with taxis. So I tried a few different layouts here with medium density. The tricky bit is deciding what looks appropriate against the rotunda build to the east. This won't do, it looks ridiculous. I'm going to have to downgrade our aspirations with the size of the buildings here. Yeah, and I think a little bit of row housing tucked in behind the high school looks a little bit more appropriate. We'll run for that just now. We'll have a few shops here as well. Those additional row houses on the slope did not look good, so they're out. I'm going to try and get some high density in its place. So I'm going to run a little diamond formation road and I'll pop some of the smallest high density residential buildings. I used dev mode and I created 4 rows branching off the diamonds. Now I will issue a word of warning, there seems to be an issue when you're overlapping high density buildings, residential. From what I could find out, there seems to be an issue with the calculations on the population, and if it appears that there is more pop than expected in the zone, it can break things in the game. So for me, I lost all of my residential demand, and I do mean all of it, there was none at all. So to remedy that, I had to delete these buildings a little bit later on, and then just to play it safe when I brought them back in, I just left a small gap between them, I didn't overlap. So just something to keep in mind, guys, if you're using Anarchy and overlapping these buildings yourself. With the buildings in place, I'll create a basic parking area for each high-rise using the dev UI and the surface mod. I'll restrict the parking on the roads to fill those car parks up, and I'll create a few water features to help break up the development a bit as well. Once that's in place, I'll use some vegetation, we'll just round the area off. I think by the time this video comes out, there should be a mod for the parking, so do check that out, guys. You'll see now that the city finances are looking a bit healthier. We reached milestone 10 small city, and that's given us a fresh injection of funds. I still have taxes high, I still have the service budgets low, and as we grow out the city, I'll look to reduce the tax and slowly bump up the service expenditure as and when the budget allows. With all the layout done and all the assets in place, it's just really down to detailing now. With Anarchy on, we can add some more appropriate vegetation to our main school block, which we'll do. For that big community area in the middle, I want to create a few activities. The first one's going to be a play area. I'm also going to create a little graduation ceremony here, and I'm going to create a softball pitch as well. So lots to do here. With the paving and surfaces, the first of these will just be the play park for the kids. So to make things a bit easier, I've plopped down the play park in game 1, and I'm just going to use the picker that comes with Find It to place some of those objects into our custom park. And to round it off, we'll fence it off and surround it with some appropriate sized bushes, some seating for parents, and we'll light it up with a bit of parking lighting as well. I think I'm happy with that. Onto the high-rise area, and now you can see the buildings are separate and we have our demand back, so time to make this area look good. I'm not going to do anything too wild, just a little mix of lined bushes, some mixed trees in the larger open areas, and I'll fill some of the areas with our versatile oak. And before I get on to the final part of the build, that's the softball field, It'll just be a case of bulking out the rest of the area and making it all look a little bit more realistic with the addition of some more appropriate bushes and trees and whatnot. So let's crack on with that, and I'll catch up with you in a couple of minutes. On to the final part of the build now. The softball field position is obviously in place already, but it will require a little adjustment to expand the area a little. Really just a case of using the curves provided by the paving. I'm going to surface around those particular curves. Once the surfaces are in, you can just delete the paths and you're good to go. The forestry surface wasn't the one, so I swapped that out for the sand. Still not 100% match, but it's about as close as we can get at this point, I think. And then to finish things off, I'm just going to fence it. We'll add some lighting. And for the final quadrant in the community area, we're going to stick a little park fountain build in there. The softball field needs some illumination. Unfortunately, the lighting doesn't quite have the range to reach to the middle of the field, but as a nighttime point of view, that doesn't look too bad. So I'll just need to finish off the surface in here, and yeah, I think I'm happy with that. And on to the final park area here. So a little bit of basic paving, a little circular bush pattern with some benches in the middle, and we'll create a little fountain centerpiece, then round it off with a few lights. The little graduation ceremony lawn is a nice addition, I think, and from dev menu I've used some of the sports park benches, a few boxes, a couple of signs, and plopped down a few tables and a few chairs. And it's a nice little addition, just gives a little mini point of interest, doesn't it, when we're zoomed in on the area. Okay then, so let's do a quick review. So starting off with a quick shot of the sports facilities at night, we can see that the softball pitch is quick to draw the eye as we scan over the area. I think with this build, we have a nice appropriate mix of development. We've managed to get some medium and high density residential in, along with the city services in a pretty tight area without looking too out of place. The row houses can be tough to fit in when there's limited matching assets surrounding, and also if the overall density of the area isn't too tightly packed. Sticking in a single block behind the height matching high school I think worked pretty well there. Giving the tower blocks a bit of space to breathe in the higher section worked well. They do have a habit of sticking out like a sore thumb if they're not placed with care. Matching up the colours on the assets help here, and that uniformity always assists in giving the impression that the buildings were put up at the same time, which is kind of what I was looking for here. Overall, not a bad little build. It was never going to be the most spectacular build in the world, as we only have 2 school assets to play with really, but with a few mods, a little bit of detail, and you can create a unique, interesting little neighbourhood whilst getting some of those essential services up and running. In next week's episode we have huge expansion along the coast. We've got a massive beach hotel area coming, along with some linear expansion of the beach property DLC residential along the water. It's been a huge amount of work putting this together, and I've gotten a bit detail heavy on it, but it is looking pretty good. I'm excited to get that one out, so make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss it. Thanks all so much for making it this far. I appreciate every single one of you. Here's a couple more videos for you.